Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne. Our guests today are Volodia, you may recognize him, we've had him on a few times, and Pavel. If you haven't heard the previous episodes that we've done with Volodia, and also with his wife, Ruslana, she did an episode as well, I recommend you go check those out. But for people that don't know who you are, maybe they haven't seen them, could you just give a bit of a background, who you are, what you do, etc.?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Daphne. And I would like to greet all those who are watching us and who become part of our story. And, our previous episode, as you said, was with my wife, Ruslana, when she was visiting me here in Ukraine. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I would say probably more fortunately, she went back to Norway, and it happened right before Russia started their cruise missiles attacks on Kiev and Ukraine in general. Because after they started doing that, the critical infrastructure in Kiev, where I live, and in many other parts of Ukraine, was largely destroyed, and that is why we had blackouts. We had electricity cut off for 4 or 5 hours, and because of this, when you don't have electricity at home, it means that you don't have heat at home. So to a certain extent, it's quite challenging. So looking at this, I'm actually happy that my wife and my daughter, they're not with me, because for men, it's a little bit easier to cope with situations like this. You just do 10 more push-ups from the floor and you are fine.
I'll put in the description box ways that if people hear this, they want to maybe help support you, get resources to you. I'll put our email. I think that's what I've done in previous episodes. I'll put our email in the description box so you can reach out to us and we can help coordinate things. We've managed to get resources out to them previously.
Yeah, and I want to thank those who have responded and given to Volodia. And to just hope and pray. This isn't something we normally do on a podcast, ask people to support. So this is very unusual.
Yeah, and maybe we can hear some about what those resources have been doing as well as we continue into this. For people that don't know really what's been going on for the last, let's say, month or so, could you just maybe give a bit of an update in terms of what has been happening?
Yeah, as I said, one of the new things, I started doing it actually with my son Pavel. Starting from October, we were going as chaplains to reoccupied territories of Ukraine, taking humanitarian aid to civilians who were left there, and also just interacting with the military personnel on different occasions. So this is new things which we started doing it. And maybe when Pavel will share his part of story, he can talk a little bit more about this.
When you said military personnel, do you mean those from Ukraine or those from Russia?
Ukrainian
okay.
Soldiers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because being a chaplain, your main task is actually to lead the person to the Lord, or at least to show them the hope in Jesus and give comfort to their hearts, because it's hard to imagine what people experience when they are under severe shelling. It's actually both civilians and military guys. So all of them, they need comfort from God. And hopefully this is what we can do to them as well. So this is one of the new roles we play now in our personal life, in our personal ministry, what we do. And of course, when back in Kiev, we continue twice a week, we continue feeding people on the train station. My church, part of which I am now, maybe 80 or 90% of our people, they left as refugees. So basically we just only a dozen of people who are doing the work and trying actually to rebuild or restart the church. And so we do this feeding programs, and we interact with the very needy people, and dozens of them they are coming to our church services at the moment, which is good. And we really see that under circumstances, situations we are in now, the only hope is in Jesus. And this is like what we try to do on every level where we are. Also, like being a minister, and for those here in Ukraine who know me for a long time, they know that normally when I come to the church, I teach, I speak about missions. It was the passion of my whole life. This is what I've been doing all my life, teaching, preaching, and doing missions. But since the war started, we as Ukrainian church, we cannot be involved totally in the missions work. But of course, I still believe that we need still to keep the vision. We should not allow for this vision to slip away from us. So we still need to keep it in our mind. But because of our situation, there is a huge need in new leaders in the church, because a lot of people, they are gone because of different reasons. So some churches, they are much more emptier from the leaders as before. So I help some churches with training their leaders. And actually in one of the church, I even did a marriage seminar, which I normally do with my wife when she's with me. But now, because we are separate, I had to do it on my own. And of course, the huge blessing for me personally, and I believe for Pasha, was that in December we got a permission to leave Ukraine for 1 month, so we could go to Norway and spend a Christmas season with our families there. It was a huge blessing, and basically we just returned to Ukraine several days ago. And also there in Ukraine, also except for being with the family, we were helping for the new started Ukrainian church there, where leadership is very immature and they need a good input from outside. And this is what we were helping them with. So,
and would visit there one military guy. He lost his leg and arm, so we could pray with him, and we could give him a small Bible with a military skin. You know what I mean?
Camouflage.
Yeah. Yeah, camouflage. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Pavel, we had your mum on previously, and she gave us some of her journey since the war began, where she was. Obviously, she was on a cruise. It's really interesting to hear what happened
and what she felt
with
like.
her and what she felt like. Could you give us some of your journey? What was happening with you? Where were you when the war started? And what's it been like for you for the last few months?
For me, it started on 24th, as for everyone, at 5 o'clock when we heard first explosions. So we woke up, and my dad wrote me, this short message, the war is here. And I understood that everything started. So we started pack our bags. We packed all our life in a few bags, and we went to my father's home, and we were thinking there and praying what should we do. So as you know, we decided to go to the west of Ukraine. So we started our journey. For some reasons, me and my wife, we had just like 200 hryvnia in my pocket. It's like maybe $10 was on that moment. So it was so interesting to see how God was protecting us and just taking care of us. So it took like 2 days for us to get to Rakhiv. It's a small town in the west of Ukraine, near border with Romania. So from 27th of February, we are living here. From the beginning, I was feeling like maybe I need to go back to Kiev because I knew that my pastor need help. But I felt in my heart that I need to be here in Rakhiv. So, and from the beginning, I put that thought in my mind that I should live here, as I'm sure 100% that I'm gonna live here for forever. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to like think that I'm here like for 1 month. So because then I would do things like I'm here for months. So I would do it not on a proper way.
Not as committed.
Not as committed, yeah, thank you. So I started being involved in the ministry here in this local church. I started do worship in church. We started do cell groups for refugees. We had a lot of refugees here in Rakhiv, and we still have a lot of refugees here because Zakarpattia, it's it's a district in Ukraine. It's the most safe district here. So most of the people, they come in here. So we're receiving them here, and we have few centers, warehouses where we're keeping food and stuff to distribute among refugees. So we're doing it since March. God is providing with a good contacts with a good churches from Europe, which is coming here to help us to bring humanitarian aid, and we're happy to do it. So for the first month, we were busy with the refugees here, but then we started to feel that we need to go further. So we decided to take aid to Kiev. Kiev on that moment was still in a dangerous dangerous situation. So we started bring help there. We made like 3 or 4 trips, and after that we started feel that we need to go further. So we started to go to east with trucks with food to the occupied territories to help people there. I made my first trip to East with chaplain. It was, I believe, July. We brought one car for my sister's brother, or for my wife's brother. He's a military, brother-in-law. So we brought a car for him. It is very not popular. It is popular that most of the soldiers, they need cars there. Van or 4x4 car. So we brought a big van for him, so they can travel easily, because otherwise they would have to go by foot with all their stuff. So we could pray for him and for all his fellows there. That first trip gave me this desire to do more and more for people there and for God, because I knew that now all of the soldiers, they are open for gospel. they're open for prayer. So from that moment, we started to think, what can we do more? And God gave us opportunity to become a military chaplain, and everything started for us. We could, from that moment, God started to open our eyes to see more opportunities when we didn't see them before. We started to more communicate with the soldiers here in Rahiv, because a lot of soldiers sending from west of Ukraine to east, so we could pray for them here. We already done 3 trips to the occupied territories. Our last trip was through all frontline. I don't know, do you know a little bit geography of Ukraine? But we went from Kherson and through whole front line
south,
to Sumy. So it's from
south, from the south to the northeast.
So you have a family of your own?
Yes, I have a wife.
Right. So can you tell us now, what was this journey like emotionally for you? I mean, you're talking about it, we did this, but you are a man, you have a wife who you care about. What was the emotional journey for you?
Emotional journey from the beginning.
Yeah.
First of all, it was very difficult to leave everything what you built. I'm talking about ministry in the church. I'm talking about our English school, because we had with my wife English school in Kiev. It was going very well. God was blessing us through it. But in one moment, everything just totally stopped, and we didn't know what's going to happen in future. Would we come back and do ministry again with Pastor Victor, or would we teach again in our school in Kiev? But we just entrusted God everything. It was difficult from that side of stopping everything what you build it already. So first month was very difficult for us, that we need to build up everything from zero. It is difficult, especially for us, because we already done it 2 times, because me and my wife, her name Alexandra, we were together in South Africa I was there for 1 year, she was there for 2 years. So as you know, when you live in home for such a long period, when you're coming back, you need to build up everything from the beginning. So it was difficult from then, and it was even more difficult now, because now we are one family, we are in a new town, and we don't have any income. So we just it was difficult.
Is she also in Norway now?
No, she's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay.
As Pasha said, this is the safest area in Ukraine. Even they don't have very often electricity cut-offs.
No, we have often, but our street doesn't have.
Where they live.
Yeah.
So, Volodia, I've got a question that I've been wanting to ask you since I read you have a thread that I follow in your report, and you've mentioned it now. You want to keep the eyes of the church on the unreached. That is your passion. For as long as we've known you, we've known it's your passion. How do you do that when you have a people who are under invasion? Their bombs can go off, they can lose their lives, they're losing their homes, they're in the cold, And you are saying to them, keep your eyes on the unreached. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I would like to say, because I believe that for us as a church, of course, we need to focus on what is going on in our country.
Right.
Because I believe it's in First Timothy. Maybe I don't remember exactly the scripture, but there are words something like that. If you're not taking care of your own people, then you are worse than the pagans. Something like this.
Yeah.
So I believe that if we as a church are not able to take care of our own people, then how can we take care of other people? So this is one side of this coin. But the other side of this coin is that, as I said, we should not lose out of sight the vision which God gave us already, like reaching the unreached. And there are many churches in Ukraine who are following this path. And of course, physically, we cannot do it at the moment. I mean, like, we cannot go to India or to Africa or to wherever, but we can still pray. We can still remind our people that this is God's vision. Because if you remember Matthew 24, this chapter, where disciples asked Jesus, give us the signs of the last time. So Jesus gives them certain things, and where he also talks about rumors of war and wars and how brother would go against brother. But then he says, but it's not yet the end. And in verse 14, he says, and this gospel of the kingdom would be preached as a testimony to the all people groups, and then the end will come. So I know that end will come only when the gospel will be preached to all the people groups. And at this moment, when we talk about this in the churches, we help people not to focus on their problems, because, you know, when you think too much about the problem, this is what kills you at the end. Because especially if you talk about the problem which you personally cannot solve it. But if you start thinking, praying about something different, this is what makes the difference. You know, recently I've heard an interesting thought that mostly those people leave the church who are not ministering to other people. And I just thought that it's quite well, maybe I cannot 100% agree with this thought, but I think the idea of this thought was that if you are not ministering to other people, not officially, I mean, from the pulpit, but on a basis one-to-one, it means that you are not investing. It means that you are not doing what Christ wants you to do, because at the end, he wants us to minister to each other. So if you are not doing, or you are not fulfilling your calling in this way, it means that you are totally losing out of sight God's purpose for yourself. That is why, like in the churches, like this coming weekend, I'm supposed to be in one church where they asked me to talk about missions, just again remind the church about the higher goal. Because, you know, there is always would be the God's goal, which is much higher than our goals. And this is how we try at least to keep the vision, pray. And I know that still some churches, they try to be faithful to their financial commitments to other people groups where they were supporting certain ministers, as our church in India, for example.
Yeah, and it's really important that even in the midst of the war, we've got people like you who are on the ground trying to be that to other people, trying to engage with them, even soldiers. I know that we actually have someone who's doing some building work on our house at the minute, and he has a friend that actually went out to the Ukraine to help, and he was captured by Russia, and was held captive for, I'm not sure how long. It was in the newspaper, a local newspaper recently, but I was talking to the guy working on our house, and he was saying since he was released and got back to England, he lives not far from where we are, he basically won't leave the house now. He's a completely different person. And, they try and invite him to come out and play football, to engage with the friends again. And he might say yes, but then when it comes to it, he'll say, no, I can't do it. I can't leave the house. And he just stays inside. And there's people like that, probably all over the Ukraine. There may be other people like him that have come to help and have been through some of the situations, and it's just changed them dramatically. And we need people like you. We need the church around the world to be able to, like you say, engage with people one-on-one, be Christ to them, and help them through these situations. So, we need people like you too. And it's great to know that while it's sad, that the whole situation, it's great to know that there are people like you still there trying to be that light in such a horrific situation.
So you must see situations like this young man all around you.
Расскажи, как к парню вы ездили.
воскресенье? Да. So 2 days ago, after Sunday,
after church Sundays.
Yeah, after church service. So we went visit one soldier. He was shot in his head. So almost half of his brain was, damaged. Yeah, damaged. Now everything is okay here, but he still can't speak on a proper way. He speak like I am.
Some parts.
Yeah, and his right arm doesn't work. So we went there, and of course we prayed. We just asked him some questions, and we asked him, "Don't you
Yeah, they asked him whether he is sorry or not that he went to the army and he was there."
Yeah, so he replied that no, never he had heard like that. He's not sorry because he understands that it's his job, because he's a man. He needs to protect what God gave him. I'm talking about land, talking about country. So, and such visits are very difficult for us emotionally to handle it, because sometimes you can hear very
touchy story.
Yeah, touchy story, and it is very difficult. So we're praying so God can give us this, power, strength to handle it, and not just handle it, but help.
Yeah, because unfortunately there are a lot of people, and there would be even more who would be injured both physically and morally after this war, and we would need help in them. And of course, since we just start this way, we understand that it would be good to have some more training in this, how to help people in situations like this, because the need is huge and would be even much bigger. And it's both civilians who experience so traumatizing events, or soldiers who went through the battles and were injured or saw things which they shouldn't see, because all these things just break people. You can be like a whole physically, like without no injuries, but your inside can be damaged and can be broken, and somebody would need to help repairing that.
So we're planning to go through one course of chaplain course about this rebuilding, recovering course.
Yeah. For people previously that have supported and helped to get resources to you, finances, maybe could you just talk a bit about what you've been doing? You've touched on it already, but just some of your experiences in terms of helping to either provide resources to people, what have resources done to help you, so that other people may be listening saying, I think I'd quite like to do this, being able to help resource things at grassroots level. If you could just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, and I, from our experience too, I would just say that very often in these situations, big organisations get financial help, and they need it. I'm not saying that. But people like yourselves who are getting on with the work, your family, your small church, very often they go under the radar and miss out on that. So our heart is very definitely to support at that level.
Yeah, thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you all those who were contributing already. Yeah, you are right that big organizations, they do a big work, and often when you are not a big organization, you're a kind of on your own, or you're just a small group of people. It's a little bit more difficult to pull resources because since the war started, we lost all means of support. Like I used to work as a translator, and I had my provision from this work. My wife, she had like her children's center, and it was providing certain support, which is now totally gone. My son and his wife, they had their English school in Kiev, which was closed. And now when they moved here, they started this school again, but again, it's just the beginning, So very often, like you don't have basic means even for yourself, because even in order to go to minister somewhere, you need to have certain means, because we all live somewhere. We all need to pay different bills. We all need to pay for fuel for our cars to go somewhere, food and etc. And that is why there are your basic living costs, which needs to be provided somehow. And also, when you plan your ministry events, it also costs something. Like as we were saying, when we go to the east to reoccupy territories, it costs something to fuel our cars. Because even like if we talk about humanitarian aids, sometimes, you just ask around different churches who have access to humanitarian aid organizations, and actually they're pretty well responding to this. But often you need to pay costs of transportation. Like, for example, normally we go by 2 vehicles to reoccupy territories, and two-way trip for 2 vehicles can cost just for fuel about $700 or $800. So we are talking about the cost. Sometimes you need to buy certain items. When some people from reoccupied territories, like when previously we were going to reoccupied territories, I was contacted by one lady, and she has a son who is a very, very big guy, and who has abnormal sizes of shoes and clothes, and who needs a certain specific medication. So she asked me if we can find it somewhere and bring it to them. So then you start looking around, because she was talking about not a normal things which you can find in a humanitarian aid. Size of clothes maybe 70, or shoes 60 for our European size, things like this. So that is why when we receive things, we just see it either helps us in our living, or we use it for doing the ministry we do. like buying things, putting fuel into our cars when we go somewhere. This is what it helps for. And it's quite hard to have a budget for that, because normally we try to go to reoccupied territory at least once a month, but it's only because of resources. If there would be more resources, we could make 2 trips, maybe 3 trips, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So we will have either of you anything that you would like to say more before we start to close?
Yeah, maybe, also about resources, like during one of our last trips to reoccupied territory, our van was broken just 70 kilometers before our target city. And it was it was a kind of a highway where on the right side and on the left side, it was mined. There were mines. And it was like already like night. So luckily we had a second van which could pull that van to our destination. And it just things like this, to repair the van, or even being able to buy another van which would be newer and better and more reliable. But of course you always use what you have. And this is, where I believe God's grace is manifested, that even like with what you have, he allows you to use it for his purposes.
Yeah, I do admire the fact, Volodia, that I know if we hadn't asked that question, you wouldn't have even mentioned it. You have always said, I'm here to serve God, he will meet our needs. But we wanted you to mention it because we want to get a grasp on what is going on and your needs there.
Maybe as we finish, could you just maybe talk a bit about where we are now? I know even in the news this morning in England, it's talking about Russia redeploying for a new big offensive that they're going to do. Maybe from your understanding, where are we now? How do you maybe see things unfolding over the next few weeks?
Well, it's actually quite hard to talk about this because on the news there are many speculations about what is going to happen. You are watching British news, we are watching Ukrainian news. And so here they're always like for months they can talk that Russia is trying to mobilize more and more people and start their offensive from different sides at the same time. Yeah, they talk about this, and looking at that, there is also huge mobilization going on through Ukraine, because it's obviously that Ukraine is much smaller and has less resources than Russia, so it takes more people here and more efforts, to try to stand against them. So, like my personal choice, because sometimes, and the news, sometimes you never know what is true and what is not true. So we just try to do our part, what we believe God showed to us. And the rest you just give him into God's hands, and you realize that at the end only God can protect you. Because often people ask whether there would be offensive at Kiev from Belarus or not, and different experts, some say, yeah, there are no signs of that offense being organized. Others says, no, there are signs. So you don't know whom believe. So as a Christians, you understand that you just need to hold on God and trust him, and even if something happens, he would lead you out of the situation, or he would show you what to do in that situation. So we want to go to reoccupied territory. That is our plan for beginning of February. That is our plan. So we try
to reoccupy the frontline to Bakhmut.
Yeah, to reoccupy territory and maybe even closer to a front line. So this is what still where some decisions are being made. So this is what we plan. We don't plan for Ukraine to be taken by Russia. So we plan for Ukraine to be taken, first of all, by God. And this is our prayer. And I believe that victory we as Christians talking about, it's not only victory when Russia leaves Ukraine, but when God would be able to reign here in people's hearts.
Well, I'm going to give a challenge to everybody listening. When you have finished and you turn this off, just stop and pray for Ukraine. That way we can mobilize across the world a prayer force through this podcast. Don't just turn it off and get on with life. Turn it off and then have a few moments praying and praying with your family, and then ask God, here am I, what can we do to help? So that's the challenge. And I would say to you, if you've done that and you've listened, in the comments box below, let us know, or in the comment box below, write a prayer, something or another, respond, so that we can manifest that worldwide prayer movement.
Yeah, and I love the perspective you just gave in terms of what does a victory even look like. We think about Russia leaving, we think about, maybe people might say, that it's back under Ukrainian control. But actually, your point is that victory ultimately is really when Christ reigns. And I love that. I think that's a great point to finish on. Thank you both, Volodia and Pavel, for everything you're doing on the ground, trying to meet the needs of people, your willingness to go out to the really dangerous places to be a light and to be a help to other people in those areas. And so again, for people listening, if you want to, one, do what Daphne just said, I think that's great. And two, if you would like to be a help with resources, with finances, etc., again, go to the description box and I'll put an email, I'll put some information about where you can do that. Volodia, Pavel, thank you. Really appreciate you both taking the time.
And we'll see you again soon.
Yes, we'll see you again soon for the next installment.
Yeah, thank you. Blessings to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.